This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your source for the latest Iowa ag news headlines right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, Mark Magnuson, and Andy Peterson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Mark.
Hello and welcome into Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Mark Magnuson. Today is Thursday, September 25th, 2025, and we're so glad you can join us for today's show. In today's episode, I will be joined by Kenan Layden of agmarket.net to break down the closing markets. But first, it is the continuation of the discussion with Dr. Eric Neumann and Dr. Marisa Rotolo of the National Pork Board in their task force efforts to eradicate porcine epidemic diarrhea virus. Mark Magnuson for the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and I'm joined today by Dr. Eric Neumann and Dr. Marisa Rotolo of the National Pork Board. And today we are talking about a task force that was put together to try and work on the ever-present porcine epidemic diarrhea virus. So next up, Dr. Neumann, I wanted to ask you, what are three things that a farm worker could do to help to reduce the mortality on a farm from PED?
Yeah, Mark, I wish I had some exciting, novel, creative news, but spoiler here, I think at the moment, the tools we've got available for this disease are going to take us down the traditional mechanisms for controlling most infectious diseases in pigs. In other words, cleanliness and hygiene and disinfection, biosecurity and bioexclusion, so keeping the virus out of your system, right, and immune management on the farm. In other words, despite the fact nearly half of the papers, just over half of the papers were reviewed, had something to do with vaccines or antiviral compounds, the messages that come out of those papers are not particularly hopeful. There's always a few nuggets. There's interesting bits of work that's going on. There's some potentially useful things, but the answer to PED in the near term being the next few years to decade, is not going to come through some exciting new 100% useful vaccine or antiviral. Those are going to be supportive to on-farm management of the disease, but they're not going to be the answer. For example, like the role of vaccine in pseudorabies eradication, which was an absolutely wonderful product and was the hallmark of that eradication program. In this case, biosecurity, cleaning and disinfection, managing your P's and Q's around transportation and dirty trucks, and supporting that with managing immunity on your farm. And at the moment, I know that there's a high reliance on purposeful exposure in gilts, for example, to generate good quality immunity in that breeding herd so that they pass off to their offspring high quality protective colostrum. That's going to continue, I suspect, to be the hallmark of control for the foreseeable future, but it's imperfect, and it looks like there's room to help that by integrating vaccines in along with that. But all of that comes with risk, of course, because you're actually adding virus to the system, not taking it away. So that creates risk for yourself and for neighbors. It also sort of has an unknown contribution to virus mutation, and whether that in fact is driving more emergence of different strains and therefore sort of perpetuating the problem. Work yet to be done, but yeah, today I think that we're going to rely on the tools that we have for a number of other diseases.
Dr. Rotolo, would you like to add anything to that list in terms of what farmers can do on farm to help reduce and control PED?
I would say Dr. Neumann covered it pretty well, but just very high level. I think biosecurity is incredibly important. Having a good relationship with your veterinarian, the ability to identify clinical signs and implement biosecurity practices such as feed biosecurity and transport biosecurity, I think are huge tools as we discuss how to control PED on farm and within production systems.
Are there other examples of PED research that has been provided by the Swine Disease Task Force, and any of those studies that have been funded in that way?
Absolutely. So the work that Dr. Neumann was funded to do actually came from a RFP that the swine disease, or apologies, RFP stands for Request for Proposals. And that was actually put out last fall and was specifically focused on PED. So the research priorities that were identified within that RFP came from both task forces, the Swine Disease Research Task Force, as well as that AASV PED Elimination Task Force. And we did fund an additional 3 studies. 2 were focused on pen-side diagnostics, so allowing producers and veterinarians the ability to test for the presence of PED in farm. And then an additional proposal which focuses on manure management as it relates to PED, specifically how long is PED infectious in manure products, as well as a literature review focused on manure management specifically related to PED.
She is Marisa Rotolo and Dr. Eric Neumann of the National Pork Board, our guest here today. Want to thank you guys both for joining us. So much great information here today in that fight to control porcine epidemic diarrhea virus and ultimately that goal of eradicating the disease. Thanks so much. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, I'm Mark Magnuson. Thank you to the team at the National Pork Board for that discussion on porcine epidemic diarrhea virus and the efforts leading towards the ultimate eradication of that virus. It is time now for our closing market coverage. I will be joined by Kenan Layden of agmarket.net next. But first, a word from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soybean Checkoff.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Time now for the closing markets here on Ag Matters PM, and I'm joined by Kenan Layden of agmarket.net. Kenan, what did we see with the trade in the grains today?
Yeah, wheat was the leader today, which is something we haven't been able to say very much lately. Those wheats were closing off of some of their lows made earlier this week, and we'll be looking for maybe some technical levels there to maybe see some further short covering. Corn and beans kind of had a roller coaster of the day, opened the day up, sold off, and then there was some buying here into the end of the day, starting at about 12:30. Yes, some news there is when we talked yesterday, Argentina had got rid of their export tax or until they sold $7 billion worth of egg commodities. Well, that took till last night, today, and taxes back on. So a lot of agricultural products moving out of Brazil, or Argentina, excuse me. I think the soy meal buy by India was one of the largest on record. So maybe some good news there that, a lot of the demand out of Argentina that would be competing with the U.S. Like a cheapest free on the board level will be taken up or sold now out of the farmer's hands. So something to watch there. But yeah, overall a good day for grains closing in the green.
And speaking of things to watch, when we think about right now the demand picture, demand and supply picture, and kind of what it will look like as we get closer to fully getting into harvest season, and of course when we wrap up harvest, when we think about next month in the WASDE report, it could be in danger, couldn't it? Because if the government were to shut down, and it would drag out for any amount of time, we could miss that WASDE report. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I guess government shutdown won't be good on any front for a lot of people. Can't put on LRP, livestock revenue protection for any cattle producers that you have. RMA will not be processing different claims. Your insurance AIPs will be. So on the insurance level, it's something to think about too. But yeah, especially since the WASDEs are geared more towards the front half of the month, the government shutdown happens likely won't be in October WASDE. So if they were going to make this yield smaller and show that on the government balance sheet versus just independent party balance sheets, we won't know for 2 months.
On the other side of the trade, how did the livestock trade today?
Yeah, I joked that there's a glitch in the matrix because cattle were down and stocks were down, and wheat was up. So Cattle selling off a little bit today, about $5 in the feeders, $1 to $2 in the live cattle. Some of that could have been because they were talking about a aid package to farmers on beef prices, and they said there would be no actual monetary payments to help rebuild the herd. And sometimes maybe something as little as that can move the market. Maybe there were some rumblings of a sooner than expected, Mexican partial border reopening. So could be a lot of things moving that market. Box beef has slid too. So, that cash price of the end product is weaker, which could have led to some of the move down. And then on the hog side, they sold off, but they were able to recover into the end of the day, especially in the front months.
What's the best way for our viewers to get in touch for more marketing information?
Yeah, best way to reach us is to log on to agmarket.net and look for a broker in your area.
He is Kenan Layden with agmarket.net, my guest here today for Closing Markets. Kenan, thanks for the time as always. Appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you to Kenan Layden of agmarket.net for joining today's show. Let's take a look at the closing market numbers. You can find that information anytime under the Markets tab of our website at iowaagnet.com.
December corn closes up 1.5 at 425 3/4. November soybeans up 3 1/4 at 1012 1/4. October soybean meal down 310 at 368.60. October soybean oil up 45 cents at 49.74. Chicago wheat up 7.5 cents at 527 even. Minneapolis wheat is up 5 cents at 573. Kansas City hard red wheat up 5.5 cents at 512 1/4. December oats up 4 1/4 at 313 even. On the Merc, October live cattle down $2 at 232.05. October feeder cattle down 558 at 354.05. October lean hogs up 68 cents at $100.10. October pork cutout unchanged at 104.45. Class 3 milk down 33 cents at 16.71.
That wraps up our closing market coverage for today and brings us to the end of today's show. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. You can follow us on social media at Facebook and X, and you can listen to our morning, midday, and closing market podcast, as well as our daily episodes of our Iowa Ag Matters podcast at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, YouTube, and Podbean. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, I'm Mark Magnuson. For Riley Smith, Dustin Huffman, and Andy Peterson, we thank you for watching Ag Matters PM.